All right. Hello and welcome, Connecticut Rivers Council. For those who don't know, my name is John Babbage, and I am the District Director for the Mark Twain District. Today, I will be speaking with Eagle Scout and the Brigade Operations Officer for the 143rd Regional Support Group of the Connecticut Army National Guard, Major Corey Holmes. Thank you for joining me today, Corey.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, it's our pleasure and our honor to have this opportunity to speak with you. Now, as you may be aware, the Connecticut Rivers Council is having our Spirit Week this week, and we're kicking things off today, appropriately Memorial Day, with the phrase "on my honor," which I think is fitting. So going along with today's theme, I want to talk to you about scouting. You were involved growing up, and you're an Eagle Scout, obviously. I see your hat, which is a great little tribute right there. So tell me a little bit about your experience in the program.
So I joined scouting in 1985 as a Cub Scout. I did the traditional Cub Scouts. I skipped Tiger Cub and went directly into the Wolf Scout program, and had the basic experience where my den met once a week, and then once a month we did a pack meeting at our local elementary school. When I crossed over from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts, I crossed over from Pack 390 in South Windsor to Troop 62 in South Windsor, Connecticut, and did my time in scouting and served in a couple different patrols. Went to summer camp every single summer. Did a weekly scout meeting at a local church on Main Street, the First Congregational Church on Main Street in South Windsor. One of the unique things that Troop 62 did when I was growing up, they actually worked on merit badges during the scout meetings. So each month we'd actually accomplish a merit badge. Each month we'd knock out a merit badge and we'd move on to another merit badge. And we would do some more merit badges during summer camp, and we'd also have some pretty neat experiential summer camp options as well, to include whitewater rafting and some other older scout trips that are very similar to what the Explorer programs do nowadays.
Okay.
So it was a very unique experience.
That's really cool. Did you have a large troop going up? I mean, I have to imagine if you do a different merit badge each month, you must have had a decent sized unit.
We sure did. I'd say we had about 70 or 80
Wow.
scouts, and a lot of really, really dedicated parents. And I think that's one thing that before we go on, I definitely want to mention that my scouting experience would not have been as phenomenal as it was if I did not have so many dedicated and responsible parents that were deeply involved with the program, teaching those merit badges and guiding us youth to a great program.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I mean, it obviously means a lot to you. You were telling me a little bit earlier about your hat. So what's the deal with the hat today?
So today in the Connecticut National Guard, it's Morale Day. So the Adjutant General, our commanding general, has given us the authority to wear a appropriate non-military hat throughout the day in our office. And today I chose to wear my Velcro hat, which has got a pretty cool patch on it. I got this neat patch with the Eagle Scout rank, and I placed it right there and to complete my outfit, so to speak. So I figured it was appropriate for our conversation today.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I mean, it's incredible. And you went through the program, you got all the way up to Eagle, and that stays with you, and it means a lot. So that's incredible.
So that's actually a good thing that we'll probably talk about a little bit later, but I definitely want to throw it out there now. Eagle Scout's one of those things that you don't just earn it once, you got to earn it every day. So you kind of need to do a good turn daily, even as you age out of scouting and you become an adult leader. You got to earn that rank. You got to earn that Eagle Scout every day.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of the scouts who are watching this have been to Eagle Court of Honors, and one of the popular the phrases that you hear in Eagle Scout Court of Honor is that you're now a marked man as an Eagle, and more is expected of you because of it. And that's very true. I mean, when you hear that somebody's an Eagle Scout, you look to them for that leadership, and you look to them to kind of be that leader that we know that they are. So that's great. What kind of leadership? I mean, obviously you were an Eagle Scout, or you are an Eagle Scout, so you did have some leadership roles within the troop. So what was your leadership experience like growing up with the unit?
So I got a chance to be a den chief, a assistant patrol leader, a patrol leader, and a senior patrol leader for a annual summer camp experience, which was really, really, really unique. And I had all of the exciting things that a senior patrol leader experiences, from emergencies at camp to people getting hurt to scouts getting lost. And at the time when I grew up, a lot of these senior patrol leaders they did maintain that responsibility for, accountability of the scouts. And obviously we had adult leaders that made sure that your numbers matched their numbers, but there was an onus on the senior patrol leader to know where everybody was at every time. So I'd have here in my little note card, let me see if I got my little, so I had this great thing, and I'd carry around camp, and I'd have every scout's name on it, and each merit badge, and each location that they were throughout the day. So I had everybody's camp schedule on me. So at any time during the day, if Mr. Edlin, our scout leader, asked, where was Tommy Smith, I could look it up and say, well, he's at Sailboat Merit Badge till 11, and then he's going to meet us at the dining hall for our lunch meal. And he'd ask me throughout the day where everybody was, and that was kind of a unique experience of accountability that I got as a teenager that most teenagers don't have to do.
Yeah, I know that for my troop when I was serving at SBL, that's certainly not something that was expected of me at the time. That's a level beyond what my scouting experience looked like, and that's a lot for a teenage kid to have to do, to know where your cadre of other crazy kids are just running around camp. So that's impressive. Yeah. Going along with today's theme, today we're focusing on the phrase "on my honor." So I want you to think back to your scout days. You're 16 years old, you're 17, you're in camp. What does honor mean to you then as a scout?
I think honor is reflected in our behavior and how we serve others. So we'll use that senior patrol leader example. The honor that I had to do that experience to the best way I could explain it is I had a young scouter first year at summer camp who was experiencing what those of us that have worked as a staff member refer to as the plague, where they miss mom and dad and they want to go home from summer camp. We did summer camp up at Camp Hines in Maine. And as you can imagine, the lengthy trip from Camp Hines to Connecticut is a very long one. And
Sure.
So I took it upon myself as a senior patrol leader, with the help of my assistant patrol leaders or assistant senior patrol leaders, to work with this young scout who was having a hard time. And we took him fishing around the cove, and by the end of our little fishing excursion, he wasn't even worried about where mom and dad was, and he caught himself a bluegill and brought it into camp and showed it off to all of his friends, and that's really what it's about, and I think that really portrays what on my honor as a young scout is. It's not about you; it's about those that are around you.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, homesickness is definitely something that, I worked at summer camps when I was going through as a youth, and it's definitely something that's real, and it's something that puts you into a situation that you wouldn't otherwise be in as a young adult, because when you're just at home with mom and dad, you don't have to deal with these things. You don't have to be kind of the role model for a young person who's going through that. And then when you're at camp, you're their hero, and you have this entirely different context to put into it. So yeah, I mean, that's a big shift for a young person to have to make. Okay. Were you involved in the Order of the Arrow as a youth? Did you have involvement with that program?
I did. I was a Brotherhood member of the Order of the Arrow, and my last assignment in Order of the Arrow was the service chief. I was responsible for the maintenance plans for the camp that we supported, and I worked closely with the camp ranger to help open camp and close camp, as that service organization normally does.
Yeah, the Order of the Arrow is great. I mean, they focus on our camps, the continual cheerful service, which I'm sure is no stranger to you and what you're doing now. Now, in addition to scouting, you were involved in some other things. I was going through your LinkedIn profile. I mean, high school jobs, you worked as a camp lifeguard, you worked as help on a farm, you were a grocery store clerk, and I'm pretty sure these are all high school jobs that you had. But then you kind of made a pivot and you worked at West Point. You served as a crisis counselor for young adults and as a caseworker with CREC, also with young adults. What did these experiences mean to you?
A lot of them go back to that service mentality, that servant leader piece, that foundation that's built in scouting. I had the opportunity to join the Connecticut National Guard in November of 1996. Right after I graduated high school, I went and got fully trained as a military police soldier. When I returned, the National Guard is a 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year organization for most of its service members. I went to college at Eastern and graduated with a degree in sociology. And with that degree, I chose to pursue a profession in direct care and case management. I first worked at Wheeler Clinic and finished up my time as a crisis counselor and a case manager at Capital Region Education Center at the Polaris Center in East Hartford.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, just going through and doing all of that, and obviously with the crisis counselor and the caseworker, you're working with oftentimes, I imagine, it's young individuals who are in unfortunate situations, for lack of a better term. Did scouting help prepare you for that?
It sure did. And the way it does is, as we all learn in scouting, the way you lead or the way that you counsel young adults is much different than the way that you have to counsel adults and very young people. The opportunity in scouting to work with your peers and also to work with junior scouts, you learn different ways to really extend your influence much better than you would had you not had those experiences. And I think that the understanding adolescence, both as an adolescent myself and also as a scout, you get the chance to understand that there's a lot going on in a teenage mind, and you have to work through that. You have to negotiate that minefield, as I like to call it, because it's much more unique than a traditional experience with a peer and adult.
Yeah. I mean, on top of the fact that you're dealing with school and when you look at school, you're around, I don't know, 200, depending on the size of the school, obviously, you're pretty much trapped in a building with 300 people for 12 years and told to get along, and you really don't have any options as far as that's concerned. I mean, growing up is a challenge in its own way. Everyone's trying to find themselves, and it could be a lot, I'm sure. And a lot of our scouts are obviously living that moment right now, so they may not have this this step away from it kind of perspectives, this 1,000 feet up. But it's definitely something that you needs a specific skill set, and you need to be patient, understanding through the process.
Scouting definitely helped me hone those skills in to a point where my ability to communicate effectively with adolescents was much better than my peers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we train our people to lead and to work with people and to be understanding and empathetic, and I think that carries in and prepares you for a lot of situations, especially working with other people, which is inevitable in the world. Now, you mentioned that in 1996, so 23 years ago, you started your involvement with the Connecticut National Guard. And in that time, you've held 15 different positions listed in your LinkedIn profile. So I guess the first thing that I want to address about the National Guard is perhaps the most obvious. What is it? What is the National Guard? Yeah.
So the National Guard started off as each state's militia, in some cases as early as 1600s. For example, the units that I've been in, they date back to the 1600s, and we have guidons or flags that have banners on it, very similar to a troop flag. And some of the flags that I've fallen underneath under command have banners that go back to the Revolutionary War, to the Civil War. I have streamers that say Gettysburg and Fredericksburg. So our formation in the National Guard is the early militia that help protect each community here in Connecticut against the Indians and the French and anything else that would invade those towns. And as it transitioned, it transitioned into a reserve component force and fell underneath the United States Army, which, as you know, we didn't create the Continental Army until just before the Revolutionary War.
Sure.
And, our units in the National Guard have been around since that time, and it provides a service not just to the state of Connecticut. So we have a responsibility to the governor. And to provide those defense support to civilian authorities, as you can see with what's going on today outside throughout our communities. And we also have a responsibility to provide a service to the President of the United States, and he can call us up for federalized missions as well. So our units do serve and deploy overseas to Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, what have you, and serve in those capacities as well.
Yeah, so for a lot of our scouts, this will be before their time. But when we speak previously, you mentioned that you, as part of the National Guard, were called upon in response to Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005. What was your role there?
I was the executive officer of a military police company that was deployed to New Orleans initially, and eventually moved to Baton Rouge. And we provided external and internal security to a shelter that was set up at the Baton Rouge Convention Center for individuals that were forced out of their homes because of that disaster.
So what does security for that entail?
We provided access control. So we made sure that no criminals got in and outside of the convention center and protected its habitants. We also provided additional support to police patrols in the Baton Rouge area.
Okay, that's obviously something that for those who remember it, Katrina was a horrible disaster, and it's one of the worst hurricanes we've had ever in this country, and thousands of man hours were put into helping there.
It's very impactful. It was a very impactful experience. We truly had the opportunity to help people on their very worst day.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And that's kind of the theme and the message that we deal with in the National Guard, especially with our defense support to civilian authorities. We help our neighbors on their very worst days.
Mhm.
I think this COVID-19 experience is another example of that. Um, the Connecticut National Guard has been mobilized to support the Department of Public Health and the Department of Emergency Services and Homeland Security to augment the services that are provided to our state citizens.
Okay, so that was actually my very next question. You spoke about the National Guard and COVID-19, and what you guys are doing, and yeah, I mean that's a modern day, very current application and description of what the National Guard is doing right now to support our communities. Wow.
So with COVID-19, the 143rd Regional Support Group provided support to 56 different missions, everything from setting up mobile field hospitals to distributing commodities and, personal protective equipment to even small businesses, where we were passing out masks to support those small businesses and also providing those distribution of ventilators throughout the state to our state hospitals to make sure that if there was an influx of patients that needed ventilation, those services and ventilators were there.
Okay, so it's additional overhead support for our existing structures right now.
Correct. And fortunately, as we're watching on the news, that we're in a very good place where the capacity of our hospital systems here in Connecticut, we're not overwhelmed. They were in a place where those systems were tested and they were prepared for the influx of patients that they received.
Yeah, and that's extremely amazing that we're able to take care of everyone who needs to be taken care of and make sure everyone stays healthy and treat the people who unfortunately have fallen ill. Now this has all been kind of responding to emergencies and responding to disasters. From my understanding, the National Guard also has a role in the National Jamboree.
It did. And it does continue to have. So the Department of Defense has a responsibility to assist the Boy Scouts of America or Scouts USA to provide that experience to the youth of its program. We've supported the National Jamboree, and we've also most recently in the last year we supported the International Jamboree at the Scout Bechtel Reserve.
Sure. So what's that look like?
What we do is we provide medical support at those facilities and also access control at the reserve and logistical support. So each site, if you've ever been out to the reserve, each site had water and ice deliveries. Those deliveries were provided for by the National Guard, a mix between West Virginia National Guard and other states that came down to support the Jamboree. Also, each of the experiential scouting areas, like the zip line, each one of these major training sites had a medical staff assigned to it. And the medical staff was a mix of civilian volunteers and also military medical professionals.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it definitely shows a fuller picture, a larger picture of the National Guard. In addition to responding to these disasters, these emergencies where we need the overhead support, it's also there helping to provide and support programs such as scouting, which is amazing. It's very in line with what we do as an organization. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's also a neat experience for as you imagine. Many of our members in the National Guard are youth themselves. They're young service members, 18 to 20s, and getting an opportunity to work with other young people that are enjoying the Scout Jamborees. It's neat because they get a chance to see folks their own age And then from the Scouters' perspective, they also get to see folks their own age doing a very unique supportive mission that they can never see themselves doing. So there's a very reflective opportunity for two young people, a Scouter and a service member, to converse and talk about their experiences. And you know, that's definitely something that was very beneficial for our service members that participated in the Jamboree. And it was also a unique experience for those young Scouters to see what they themselves could do if they chose to join the organization.
Yeah. So going along that vein where you have young people who are volunteering and working with the National Guard, what is that something that interested you to join? How did your involvement with the National Guard start?
So I grew up in a very very strong household with great parents, and I'm sure they're going to watch this and they're going to hear me talking about them.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. And I grew up in a house where you earned everything. You worked hard for the things that you wanted, and I wanted to go to college. And you know, it's not that my folks weren't there to support me, but they had kind of instilled in me at a young age that everything that you deserve, you earn, you have to work hard for. So I looked around at the different services. And I sat with multiple recruiters from every single Department of Defense agency you could think of. And the National Guard offered a tuition waiver for all state schools here in Connecticut. I chose the National Guard to pay for that education. I got a 4-year degree at Eastern Connecticut State University. And, you know, that experience, you know, while I was serving, going to college, I chose to stay in the organization because I loved it so much. And that's what brings me here today. I'm actually what's called an active Guard and Reserve member. So this is my full-time job. My full-time job is to provide operational support to the units that fall underneath the regional support group. So we have 4 battalions here, and I provide training and operational support for those 4 battalions.
Okay. I was looking a little bit at the structure when I was trying to find your official title, and I saw that there's the 4 different sections to it. And yeah, what are the specific sections? What do they do?
So we have 4 different battalions underneath the RSG. We have an aviation battalion that flies both the CH-47 and the 60 helicopter as well, the UH-60 helicopter as well. We also have a engineer battalion that has traditional construction equipment, you know, Caterpillar, you know, dozers and anything else that you could make that you wanted to build a road or build a structure. We have a medical battalion which provides direct care capabilities, everything from dental to X-ray to you know, a PA, a doctor, a surgeon, you name it. We also have a CSSB or a combat service support battalion, and they're actually the organization that's responsible for providing the commodities distribution for this COVID-19 support mission. The combat support battalion, the combat service support battalion is the one that's has a trucking company and a warehouse capability to do distribution of any commodity that you can imagine.
Sure.
So that's the unique layout of our organization here.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different moving parts, and not everyone's doing exactly what you would inherently guess. Going through, I'm like, oh, the medical people are probably doing COVID support, but they don't have the same infrastructure to be able to provide the kind of support that you're rendering. Okay. How did the scouting prepare you for your service in the National Guard?
So I oftentimes reflect to the scout law. You know, the scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. We also have the Army values, and the Army values is an acronym that spells out leadership, and it's loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. As you can see, there's some cross-pollination between those two very, very strong foundational pieces of my life. And I think that's really the strongest part of it, is those two unique pieces, the Scout Law and the Army values, really built a very strong foundation for me to participate in the United States Army and the National Guard. The leadership experiences that I had in scouting really are very similar to the same experiences that you have as a young leader, and as an old leader in the Army as well. The same negotiations that you have to make with a young scouter to make sure that he goes to bed when he's told to go to bed are very similar to the same negotiations I have to make to young soldiers when it's time to rack out for the next day's business.
Sure. Everyone's just kind of the same, and it's the same kind of skills you need for everyone.
Yes, and really, I think the unique thing is our scouters today and yesteryear, they get an experience they're placed in leadership positions that youth their same age they don't experience if they're not in a scouting or a youth organization, a youth run organization. They're not normally placed in those leadership roles where they actually have to guide their peers. And that's probably the most beneficial part of scouting is being able to lead your peers and being able to extend your influence and get people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it, not because you told them to.
Yeah, that's a great point. When I was working with a summer camp, I had tasked a staff member to come up with their program for scout skills for the week. And I got an email from this scout's mother, this area director's mother, saying, "Do you really expect my 16-year-old son to come up with the program?" And my response was, "Yeah, I do. I think he can do it." And it's a little bit of pushing to provide the growth that we expect to see from our young leaders and our volunteers and the National Guardsmen.
Yeah, it truly blows my mind, even going to scout camp now as an adult, and we see these phenomenal program directors at our camps here in Connecticut. And I'll just highlight those. And I met this young man when I was a Cub Scout, when I was a Cub Master. I took my pack to Camp Tadma, and there was this young man there named Tony DiNicola, and he was the program director for Tadma, I believe it's last year. And his ability to capture the imagination and attention of the youth was absolutely phenomenal. And then when I found out how old he was when he was doing this experience, it just blew my mind that a young man who was only 1 year out of high school was able to capture the attention and the anxiety and the passion of an entire camp. Hundreds of scouts and scout leaders in a very brief period of time, and it's just phenomenal what our young leaders do. And I think he's a perfect example. And I'm sure Tony's going to watch this too, and he'll see what me talking about, and he's probably blushing in the background. But I think he's a good example of what we see out there in our young leaders in scouting, and that's really phenomenal, truly phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, our camp staff as a whole changes young people in ways that I don't think they're prepared for. I've worked with so many counselors who come home after a single summer and get calls from parents saying he's a completely different person now. He's grown so much over the course of those 6-7 weeks at camp. It's incredible.
It sure is.
So one thing that I do want to talk about, I'm not going to take too much more of your time, but one thing that I want to talk about is, now we spoke about your view of honor when you were a scout. How has that changed since you've been working with the National Guard for these past, what was it, 23 years?
I think there's another piece of it that I didn't quite understand until I became an older scout and a younger service member. And that's the reverence piece of it. As we roll into Memorial Day weekend, and we we take a moment to reflect on those service members out there that have given the ultimate sacrifice. I do remember as a young scout honoring those fallen service members during Memorial Day experiences, putting flags into graveyards and recognizing those service members. And I think that that's another part of honor that definitely was developed as a foundation, as a scout, that I didn't truly appreciate it until I became an older scout and a younger service member. And now, having served so many years in uniform and having buried, many of my peers who have given the ultimate sacrifice, you sit back and that's the part of honor that we get back to, and that reverence that we recognize those folks that have given themselves to this great nation.
Yeah, and that's a perspective that I personally don't have, because I haven't served. I haven't served in the armed forces or the National Guard, and I'm sure it's something that you don't fully appreciate until you're in that situation. And there's a lot to honor about all of our fallen heroes, and our active service members. Yeah.
So one thing I do want to highlight is I did notice a social media feed from one of our local troops here in Middletown, where I reside and work. Troop 72 in Middletown went to Connecticut Trees of Honor, where a tree is in place for each one of the 65 service members from the state of Connecticut that have passed since the global war on terror started. And they did a service day at the Connecticut Trees of Honor, and they cleaned up those sites, each one of the markers, and they put new mulch down for each one of those new markers for each one of the service members. And that's really what reverence and honor is about in scouting. I think it's a great example of what our scouters are doing. And it is unfortunate that right now, because of what's going on out there for the safety of our scouters, we aren't doing the national cemeteries. I think that the Connecticut Trees of Honor vignette that I just spoke of is a good example of ways that troops can go and they can be reverent. Doing a good service, doing a good turn daily is really what it's all about. And if there's going to be plenty of time where it is safe for scouters to go back out and to recognize those heroes. And there's no reason that, August 1st this year, if it's safer, that scouts can't go do a service project at a national cemetery if it's appropriate and it's safe at that time. The Memorial Day is a day on the calendar. Service can be done at any time. It truly is. So I know that you probably didn't necessarily need me to go down that road with some of the challenges that we're experiencing during this time, but I just want to let our viewers know that when it's safe for our scouters to do those service projects, you can do them at any time, and they'll mean just as much in August as they will in May.
Yeah, please don't put yourselves at risk. Stay home right now. Stay healthy. And when things are safer for you to be outside, go ahead and do that service project. Go ahead and put flags on the cemetery.
Absolutely.
People don't want you getting sick.
Agreed.
That's the big thing to keep in mind.
Correct.
So I have two more questions. The first one is basically, what advice would you give to scouts today, knowing what you know? Or I was originally thinking, like, what advice would you give to yourself? But I want this to be something more for all scouts.
Okay. I would do a lot of research before you make decisions. Whether it's a decision about which high school to go to, which college to go to, what to do when you graduate either one of those institutions. Do some research, spend some time, and make sure that the choices that you make benefit not only yourself but others as well. And it's very much the same advice I give to young Life Scouts that are planning their Eagle Scout project. Plan a project, plan a lifestyle that not only you but others can benefit from.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's perfect. And my last question is, or it's really, yeah, it's a question. I understand that you served as a recruiter. So if someone were looking to get involved in the National Guard, what would you say to them?
I would say that our social media is on point. Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat. You can jump on any one of those social media platforms and do a quick click or two and be into some of our phenomenal recruiters base pages. We have some very, very interesting folks out there that are in recruiting, and there is so many different avenues to talk to a recruiter. I had 2 recruiters today that were on Facebook Live doing a question and answer session. So there's plenty of opportunities to do interactive social media experiences with our recruiters. There's plenty of opportunities out there to come visit our facilities and to take a look at what we do. We also host a number of scouting activities later on in the year when it becomes safe again. We've hosted a number of district camping experiences at our training facility down at Camp Net in Niantic. We've hosted a number of different scouting opportunities in our facilities, whether it's a first aideree that we hosted, at the Hartford Armory earlier this year. But there's plenty of opportunities where that exposure to the National Guard and scouting, they coalesce.
All right. That's wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers today?
Just like I said in the beginning, for those leaders out there, it doesn't matter what your rank is in scouting or whether you're an adult or a volunteer. Just remember, you earn it every day. So when you're out there going about your business, make sure that you understand that folks are always watching you. So always do the right thing, and always try to do a good turn daily if at all possible.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Major Corey Holmes. That's all I have for you right now. If you, the viewer, have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and depending on how this goes, we'll see if Major Holmes or somebody else from the National Guard would be interested in joining us, and we might be able to do a second interview of sorts, a second sit-down Q&A kind of thing. And we hope you enjoyed our time. Thank you very much, Major.